My father put 6 pages in my hand, while the banquet coordinator was testing the microphone. On the first page, in bold type, he had written the words I was supposed to say about him. The third paragraph claimed he worked extra shifts to pay my college tuition. He never paid $1 of it. In the margin, beside that lie, he had typed, "Pause and look at Dad." 2 pages later, he had written another instruction. "Smile, let the room applaud, then hug him." I was 40 years old, the president of a community college, and my father had written me a childhood because he did not trust the real one to make him look good. In less than an hour, 300 people would watch me stand beside him. Most of them believed I was there to honor the man who raised me. He leaned close enough for me to smell peppermint on his breath. "You don't have to mean every word," he whispered. "You just have to read it." That sentence was the reason I finally understood what he wanted. He did not want forgiveness. He wanted footage. Before I tell you what happened when my name was called, you need to know how a man can be absent from a child's life and still become famous for raising her. It does not happen all at once. It happens one harmless story at a time, especially when the child learns that correcting adults makes everyone uncomfortable. My name is Naomi Brooks. I live outside Columbus, Ohio, and I run Franklin Valley Community College. We serve students who work night shifts, raise children, care for parents, and still show up for class with coffee in paper cups. I understand them because I started the same way. My father, Raymond Brooks, spent nearly 4 decades coaching basketball at Ridgeview High School. In our county, people did not call him Raymond. They called him Coach Brooks, even at the grocery store, even at church, even after his knees got bad and he stopped demonstrating drills himself. He won state titles. He sent players to college. He kept a box of handwritten letters from men who said he had changed their lives. Some of those letters were probably true. That was what made my story hard to explain. My father knew how to show up for boys in a gym. He knew which kid needed a ride home, which one was hiding an empty lunch account, and which one was pretending not to be afraid of his own father. He could see need from across a basketball court. He just could not see mine. My parents separated when I was 8. My mother, Elaine, moved us into a 2-bedroom apartment above a pharmacy. The kitchen window faced a brick wall, and the radiator clanged every morning before dawn. She worked payroll for a plumbing company during the day and cleaned offices 3 nights a week. Dad moved into a townhouse 12 minutes away. For the first year, he picked me up every other Saturday. Then basketball season started, and Saturdays became tournaments. He said he would make it up in spring. Spring became summer camps. Summer became pre-season conditioning. By the time I was 10, our visits were mostly promises made on the phone. He was never cruel during those calls. Cruelty would have been easier to name. He was warm. He called me Peanut. He asked about school, then interrupted my answer because an assistant coach was waiting. He said he loved me. He always sounded sincere. Then he did not come. My mother never called him a bad father. That mattered later. She would stand at the window after he missed another pickup and say, "Your dad loves you. He is just very good at believing his intentions count as actions." At 10, I thought that was kindness. At 40, I knew it was a warning. The first public story began when I was 11. I won the county spelling bee and appeared in a photograph in the local paper. Dad had not attended. He had promised, but his team had an extra practice before a regional game. The next Sunday, he brought the newspaper into a diner and showed it to 3 men from school. I was sitting beside him in a booth, drinking chocolate milk. "That girl has my discipline," he said. "I never let her quit when things get hard." The men smiled at me. One of them said, "Your dad must keep you on your toes." I looked at Dad. He winked. My mother had studied word lists with me every night for 6 weeks. She had taped index cards above the sink and quizzed me while washing dishes. Dad had called once and asked whether the bee was on Friday or Saturday. I could have corrected him. Instead, I smiled because the men were proud of him and his hand was resting on my shoulder. I had waited weeks for that hand. That was the bargain before I knew it was a bargain. He gave me public affection. I gave him public credit. If you grew up with a parent who looked better from the audience than from the kitchen table, you probably understand why a child protects the performance. The performance is sometimes the only version of the relationship she gets. The pattern repeated through high school. Dad claimed he checked homework he never saw, took credit for a summer program Mom drove me to, and described a school play he had missed. Each story was small enough to release. He never stole the whole truth at once. He took it in pieces that made resistance look petty. When I did object, he turned the correction into a joke. "I did not help with the spelling bee," he would say. Fine. Apparently, moral support does not count in this family. People laughed. I laughed too. My mother did not. One night, after a school awards ceremony he had skipped, she found me standing in the bathroom with my certificate. I was practicing how I would tell him about it without sounding angry. She watched me in the mirror. "Baby, you are allowed to describe what happened." "I know. You keep editing yourself so he does not feel accused." "I am not editing." She pointed at the certificate. "Then say who was there." She had been there. She had arrived in her payroll blouse with a coffee stain near the cuff. She had clapped so hard that the principal looked toward our row. Dad had sent a text after the ceremony. "Proud of you, Peanut. Knew you could do it. I told Mom that counted for something." She nodded slowly. "It does. It just does not count for everything." That sentence stayed with me longer than any speech my father ever made. When I graduated from high school, Dad attended because the basketball boosters reserved seats near the stage. He wore his school jacket and shook hands all the way to our row. During the ceremony, he took one photograph of me receiving my diploma. Mom took 37. Afterward, he posed between us. The newspaper printed that photograph under a short article about local graduates. The caption called me Coach Brooks's daughter. Mom clipped it anyway. I started at Franklin Valley Community College that fall because it was affordable and close to home. Dad told people I had chosen community college because he believed in building fundamentals. The truth was simpler. My mother and I had sat at the kitchen table with a calculator, and it was what we could manage. I worked mornings in the campus advising office. Mom paid for my first semester of books. A small state grant covered tuition, and I paid the rest through work and scholarships. Dad gave me a Ridgeview sweatshirt. It was too large, but I wore it because he seemed pleased when I did. During my second year, I won a transfer scholarship to Ohio State. I called him from the advising office. "That's my girl," he said. "All those talks about discipline paid off." I held the phone and tried to remember the talks. There had been one conversation in a diner when I was 14. He told me talent was useless without repetition. Then he spent 20 minutes discussing a point guard who refused to practice free throws. Maybe he meant me too. That was how I kept making room for him. I took any sentence that could have been fatherly and stretched it until it covered the empty places. Mom celebrated the scholarship by buying a grocery store cake with blue icing. She wrote my name on it herself because the bakery counter was closed. The letters leaned downhill. It was the best cake I ever had. Dad did not come. He had an alumni game. Years later, his retirement speech would say that he worked evenings and weekends so Naomi could graduate debt-free. He had not written that line carelessly. He knew exactly what story he was replacing. I transferred, finished my bachelor's degree, and earned a graduate assistantship that covered most of my master's program. My mother kept every award letter in a green metal box under her bed. She also kept receipts, not because she expected a fight, but because money was tight and she tracked everything. Dad kept newspaper clippings. That difference explained both of them. Mom remembered the cost of getting me somewhere. Dad remembered the moment other people noticed I had arrived. I built my career slowly. First, I was an academic advisor. Then I supervised student support programs. I became a dean in my early 30s and returned to Franklin Valley as president years later. Dad attended my presidential installation. It was the first major event in my adult life that he reached before the doors opened. I thought he had changed. He sat in the front row beside my mother. When I walked onto the stage, he stood first. His applause was so loud that other people stood with him. For 1 hour, I let myself be 9 years old again. I let his presence mean more because I had wanted it for so long. At the reception, a trustee asked Dad what it felt like to raise a college president. He put one hand over his heart. I always told Naomi education was the one thing nobody could take from her. My mother was standing close enough to hear. That sentence was hers. She had said it the night we filled out my community college application. She had said it again when I wanted to quit my master's program because the workload felt impossible. Dad had probably heard her say it once, or maybe I had repeated it to him. Either way, he delivered it beautifully. The trustee touched his arm. "You must be so proud." "I pushed her hard," he said. "She did the work, but I pushed." Mom looked at me. I knew that look. "Say who was there." I opened my mouth. Then a photographer asked us to stand together, and Dad moved into the center. The moment passed beneath flashes and congratulations. Later, Mom and I sat in my office while staff cleared the reception downstairs. She removed her heels and rubbed one foot. "You almost said something," she told me. "I did not want to make a scene." "You would not have made a scene. He would have." She smiled without humor. "That is how he trained you." The word trained bothered me because it sounded deliberate, so I defended him. I said he was proud and did not know how to express it without turning everything into a coaching story. Mom listened. Then she asked, "Do you think he does not know the difference between attending your life and narrating it?" I did not answer. I loved my father. I need to say that plainly because stories about absent parents often get flattened into hatred. I did not hate him. I liked him. He was funny. He remembered the names of my staff members after meeting them once. He could make nervous students feel seen. When a former player lost his home in a fire, Dad organized a fundraiser before anyone asked. He also called me mostly when he needed a favor. A recommendation for a player. He often wanted a tour for a donor's niece, a seat at a campus event, or a quote for the school newsletter about how athletics built character. I usually helped. Every favor created a small public scene in which he introduced me as the daughter I raised to believe in education. The phrase changed, but the structure stayed the same. My success became his most polished trophy. My mother died 5 years before his retirement. She was 62. A cancer diagnosis turned one spring into appointments, treatments, and careful conversations in parking lots. She lasted 14 months. Dad visited her twice. The first time, he brought flowers and stayed 40 minutes. The second time, he sat beside her bed and talked about a former player whose wife had the same diagnosis. Mom thanked him for coming. After he left, she stared at the flowers. "Your father always brings the right prop." I asked whether she wanted me to throw them away. "No," she said. "They are pretty. A thing can be useful and still not mean what someone wants it to mean." That was Elaine Brooks. Even dying, she refused to make reality simpler than it was. During her final week, I slept in a chair beside her bed. Dad texted me every morning. He asked how she was, but he never came. The night before she died, Mom asked me to bring the green metal box from her apartment. Inside were my school programs, receipts, scholarship letters, and every photograph she had taken. There was also a small stack of index cards from the spelling bee. She touched the top card. "I kept too much." "You kept the right things." "No, I kept proof because I was afraid you would forget who showed up." I told her I would never forget. She squeezed my hand. "Then you do not need to spend your life proving it." I misunderstood her for years. I thought she was telling me to let Dad's stories go. I thought peace meant refusing to argue over credit. What she meant was that I did not need a courtroom to speak the truth. After the funeral, Dad gave a beautiful eulogy. He described Mom as the foundation of our family. He said she made every sacrifice look easy. All of that was true. Then he added, "We raised one remarkable daughter together." I stood in the front pew and felt the word together settle over the room. No one questioned it. I did not question it either. At the reception, people told us what a devoted family we were. Dad kept one arm around my shoulders. I was grieving, and the weight of his arm felt comforting. That is another reason the myth survived. Sometimes the person who uses your history is also the person whose comfort you still want. After Mom died, Dad called more often, and for a while I wondered whether grief had changed him. Then a local profile praised Coach Brooks for balancing championship seasons with raising a college president. He told the reporter, "Coaching made me a better father, and fatherhood made me a better coach." Daniel read the line beside me. We had been married 12 years, and he knew both Dad's charm and his distance. "What would happen if you corrected him once?" he asked. He would say I was punishing him for being imperfect. "Everyone knows the coach who drove boys home, not the father who missed my play." Daniel nodded. "You are afraid of being cast as the villain for telling the truth." He was right. My public life made the fear worse because, as a college president, I spent my days choosing words that kept people in the same room through budgets, faculty concerns, student protests, and donor expectations. My job rewarded calm. Dad learned that my calm could be used as consent. The retirement announcement came in January. Ridgeview planned a banquet for late May, after the school year ended. The event would raise money for a student athletic fund and honor Dad's 38 seasons. He called me before the public announcement. "Save the last Saturday in May," he said. "They are finally getting rid of me." I laughed. "Retiring is not the same as being removed. You have not seen my knees." He sounded lighter than I had heard him in months. Then his voice changed. "They want you involved." "How involved?" "A few words, nothing dramatic." That phrase should have warned me. Nothing dramatic was what my father called any request that depended on me staying quiet. I asked who was organizing. "Lydia Grant from the Education Foundation." "You know Lydia?" I knew of her. She was a former Ridgeview counselor who now ran a county nonprofit. We had shared a panel once. Dad continued, "They are doing something about family legacy. You are the obvious person." "What kind of something?" "They are still shaping it." I told him to have Lydia contact my office. He went silent for half a second. "Your office? For scheduling? This is family, Naomi. It is also a Saturday in commencement season." He exhaled. "Right, President Brooks." The title sounded like a complaint. I softened. I said I would protect the date. I told him I wanted to celebrate his career. That was true. His career deserved celebration. He had helped many students. I could honor what he had done without pretending he had done it for me. At least, that was what I believed then. Lydia emailed the next morning. Her message was warm and professional. She explained that the County Education Foundation had selected Dad for a new Legacy in Leadership Award. The award recognized an educator whose influence reached both students and family. She wrote that my career made the family portion especially meaningful. I read that sentence twice. Then I kept reading. The program would include a short video, remarks from former players, the award presentation, and a tribute from me. Dad had already confirmed my participation. I called him. "You told them yes for me." "I told them you would be honored." "That is not the same thing." "Would you have said no?" "I would have asked what I was agreeing to." He laughed lightly. "You are agreeing to say something nice about your father at his retirement. I can say something true. Of course, that is the idea." His answer came too quickly, and I asked whether he had seen the award materials. "Bits and pieces." "What does family legacy mean?" "It means you turned out well. That describes me. It does not describe what you did." The silence lasted longer this time. Then he said, "We are not starting this now. Starting this." As if the truth were an old argument I had dragged into a new room. I am asking a question, and I am asking you not to reduce 38 years of service to a custody calendar. I looked out my office window at students crossing the quad in winter coats. This is not about your players. It is all connected. No, Dad, that is the problem. You keep connecting things that were separate. His voice cooled. Lydia will send details. Do not turn a good night into therapy. He hung up first. I sat with the phone in my hand, angry and embarrassed. Then I did what I had always done. I told myself it was one evening. The draft speech arrived 3 weeks later. It came from Dad, not Lydia. The subject line said, "Easy version so you do not have to work." Attached was a document titled Naomi Tribute Final. Final? I opened it between budget meetings. The first line read, "Good evening. I am Dr. Naomi Brooks, but before I was a college president, I was Coach Brooks's first student." I stopped there. My father had never coached me in anything. He had once tried to teach me how to shoot a free throw at a church picnic. After 6 minutes, a former player arrived, and Dad left me holding the ball. The speech continued. It said he woke me before school to study. It said he checked my report cards at the kitchen table. It said he missed games because he was working extra shifts to pay for my education. It said he attended every milestone he could and taught me that leadership meant service. The last part was almost true. He had said leadership meant service. He had said it at banquets, clinics, and press interviews for years. I had heard it from stages. The speech treated hearing him speak as being raised by him. I reached the final page. "Dad, every student I help carries a piece of what you gave me." Below that, in brackets, he had typed, "Pause for applause." The next sentence thanked him for believing in me before I believed in myself. Then came the final instruction. "Leave podium, embrace Dad, hold for photo." I printed the speech and placed it on my desk. The paper looked official, almost ceremonial. 6 pages. Wide margins, large font. My father had not merely drafted thoughts, he had staged my gratitude. Daniel read it that night at our kitchen counter. When he reached the college tuition paragraph, he looked up. "Does he know your mother kept receipts?" "Yes." "Does he know you know?" "Yes." He turned another page. "This is not exaggeration. No, it is impersonation." That word was sharper than I wanted. He probably thinks he is helping. With what? Timing, structure, maybe he thinks I am busy. Daniel tapped the bracketed instruction. "He wrote when you should hug him." I took the pages back. Defending Dad had become a reflex that fired even when there was nothing left to defend. I heard it happening and still could not stop. The next morning, I emailed him a revised speech. Mine was 2 pages. I wrote that his work had shaped generations of students. I mentioned 3 former players who had become teachers and coaches. I said I respected his ability to recognize potential in young people. I congratulated him on a career built around discipline and service. I did not mention my childhood. I did not mention Mom. I ended with, "I am glad to be here to recognize what you gave this community." Everything in it was true. Dad called within 11 minutes. "What is this?" "My speech. This is a press release. It is a tribute to your career. You sound like I was your principal. I am not comfortable saying the other things." "Which things?" He knew. I made him hear them anyway. "You did not wake me up to study. You did not check my homework. You did not pay my tuition. You did not attend most of my milestones." I never said most. The speech says every milestone you could. I could not attend when I was working. You were coaching. That was my work. You did not pay for college. I paid support. Sometimes late and not after I turned 18. His breath changed. "So now we are auditing child support?" "No, I am refusing to claim it was tuition." "You benefited from my career." "How?" "Your name opened doors." I laughed once because the alternative was shouting. "At a community college advising office. You think people did not know who you were." I worked there before anyone knew me. You always do this. I gripped the phone. Do what? You take a warm memory and put it under a microscope until nothing human survives. The accusation landed because it was built from a real fear. I did analyze. I did choose precise language. I did distrust emotional claims that could not survive facts. My father knew my weakness. He knew I never wanted precision to look like punishment. I said, "Use my version." He answered quietly. The award is about more than my career. What does that mean? It means they are recognizing the whole legacy. What whole legacy? You. There it was. I told him I had not agreed to be evidence for an award about his fatherhood. He said, "Nobody is putting it that way." Then why can I not speak only about your career? He did not answer. I asked again. Finally, he said, "Because the foundation wants the personal story." Whose personal story? Ours. We do not have the one you wrote. His voice hardened. Your mother spent years making me the villain. I stood so quickly that my chair rolled into the wall. Mom defended you. She kept score. She kept us alive. That is dramatic. She worked 2 jobs. So did I, for your team. For my family, too. I closed my eyes. This was the argument beneath every story he had ever told. If he worked hard anywhere, he believed the effort belonged to everyone who loved him. He continued. I am not asking you to lie. I am asking you to honor the ways I influenced you. Then let me choose the words. The committee approved the program. I went still. Approved what? He paused. The general shape. Did they approve the speech? They know you are giving a daughter's tribute. Did you send them this speech? It is not a legal document, Naomi. That was not an answer. I told him not to distribute words under my name. He called me controlling. Then he said something that changed the temperature of the conversation. People are already coming because you will be there. I asked what he meant. The college sponsors bought tables. County officials are coming. Former players are flying in. It matters that my daughter is part of the night. Your daughter or the college president? That is insulting. Which part? He hung up. For 2 days, I heard nothing. Then Lydia called my office. She sounded cheerful. She thanked me for supporting the event and asked whether I had any dietary restrictions. I asked whether she had received a copy of my speech. Raymond sent a draft, she said. It was beautiful. My hand tightened around a pen. Was my name on it? Yes, he said you 2 wrote it together. I looked at the 2-page version on my desk. We did not. Lydia became quiet. I told her Dad had drafted language for me, but I had replaced it. I said I would be happy to offer truthful remarks about his professional career. I kept my tone even because Lydia was not the problem. She asked me to send my version. I did. An hour later, she called again. The foundation chair is concerned, she said. About what? The award description. What does my speech have to do with the award description? Another pause. Raymond's nomination focused heavily on family influence. Who nominated him? I assumed you knew. I do not. She lowered her voice. The original nomination came through the Ridgeview Booster Association. That sounded plausible. Dad had spent years building that group. Then Lydia added, Raymond submitted the supporting materials himself. The room seemed to narrow around me. What supporting materials? I should not have said this much without reviewing the file. Lydia, my name is in that file. Yes. Are there claims about me? Yes. I asked her to send me anything attributed to me or describing my personal history. She said she needed to speak with the foundation chair first. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I opened Dad's speech again. For the first time, I noticed that certain phrases did not sound like him. Educational continuity, household culture of achievement, financial sacrifice through secondary employment. Those were not banquet lines, they were application lines. The speech was not the beginning of the lie. It was the performance of a lie already submitted. That evening, Dad left a voicemail. Lydia called me confused. I do not appreciate you creating problems with the foundation. This is a retirement dinner, not a deposition. Call me when you are ready to act like family. I saved the message. I did not save it as evidence. I was tired of living as if every hurt needed a folder, and I saved it because I wanted to hear the phrase clearly. Act like family. My father had always used family as a role I could perform on demand. Attend, smile, confirm, protect. The role came with no rehearsal except years of swallowing corrections. I did not call him back. 3 days later, Lydia sent a secure email with a note that said the foundation had reviewed my request. She attached only the sections of the nomination packet that referenced me. There were 9 pages. Dad had completed a questionnaire under the Booster Association's name. The association president had signed the cover page, but the answers were written in Dad's voice. I recognized his favorite phrases. The first question asked how the nominee's professional values had influenced his immediate family. Dad wrote that he had raised his daughter with the same daily structure he used for athletes: morning study sessions, weekly goal reviews, mandatory reading. The application also claimed regular attendance at school events. Although none of that happened, the next question asked for examples of personal sacrifice. He wrote that he had taken evening work during my college years so I could complete my degree without loans. He never had an evening job outside coaching. He ran paid basketball clinics, and the money stayed in his program account or his household. I had student loans for 3 years and paid them myself. The next section asked how the nominee's family continued his legacy of service. Dad described my career in detail. He listed my title, awards, and college initiatives. He wrote that I often credited him for teaching me to lead. I had never said that. Then I reached the attachments. One was the newspaper photograph from my high school graduation. Dad stood beside me in his Ridgeview jacket. My mother was on my other side in the original. In the submitted version, she had been cropped out. I stared at the white edge where her shoulder should have been. The next attachment was a photograph from my presidential installation. Again, Dad stood beside me. Again, my mother had been cropped away. The lie was not only what he added, it was who he removed. I called Lydia. Did the committee see the original photographs? These are the copies we received. My mother was in both. Lydia inhaled softly. I am sorry. Did he tell the committee she raised me? The packet says your parents shared responsibility. I looked at the sentence about evening work. My mother paid for my books. I had grants, wages, scholarships, and loans. He did not pay my tuition. I understand. No, I need you to understand that this is not a disagreement about emotional emphasis. Those claims are false. She said the foundation could revise the award language. They could remove the family portion and honor only his career. That was reasonable. It was exactly what I had wanted. Then she said, we would need Raymond's cooperation because the program has already gone to print. I almost laughed. The program, the banners, the video, the tables. My father had built a room around the story before I knew there was a story. I asked whether my participation was required. No, of course not. Does he know that? He believes you confirmed. I confirmed the date. Lydia apologized again. She sounded genuinely embarrassed. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. Before we ended the call, she asked what I planned to do. I do not know. That answer frightened me more than anger would have. I was still considering the possibility that I should go along with it, not the full speech. I told myself I would never read the full speech, but maybe I could attend, use my version, accept the altered award language, and prevent the evening from collapsing. That was how my father's stories survived. He created a crisis large enough that truth began to feel irresponsible. Daniel found me at the dining table with the packet spread around me. He picked up the cropped graduation photo. Where is Elaine? Cut off. He looked at the second photo. Here too, I nodded. Daniel sat across from me. What are you considering? Lydia can change the language. What are you considering? I hated that he knew. I can give my version. He still gets honored for coaching. The foundation does not get embarrassed. The fundraiser continues. And the audience sees you standing beside an award he obtained by lying about you. They may not know the family details. They do not need to, he will know. I push the photographs together. I do not want to destroy his retirement. Daniel's voice stayed gentle. You are not holding a match, Naomi. You are holding a speech he wrote. I got up and walked to the sink. He followed after a moment but did not touch me. I said, Mom would have hated a public fight. Probably. She would tell me to protect the students who benefit from the fundraiser. Probably. She might tell me to let him have one night. Daniel waited. Then I heard my mother's real voice, not the convenient one I was building for her, say who was there. I turned around. Daniel held up the cropped photograph. He already made the fight public. He just planned for only one side to speak. That was the first night I understood that silence could be an action. Mine had been helping him. The next week, I made my first mistake. I called Dad and told him I had seen the nomination packet. I should have waited until I knew what I wanted. Instead, I wanted to hear him explain the cropped photographs. Some part of me still believed the right question could make him recognize the line he had crossed. He answered on the second ring and accused me of jeopardizing the award over wording. I named the false tuition claim. He answered that he had contributed to my life, paid support, and built a reputation that benefited me. Every answer moved sideways. Why did you crop Mom out of the photographs? He was quiet. Dad, the committee wanted images of the nominee with the person affected. She was the person who raised me. This award is not about her. That is exactly the problem. His voice sharpened. Your mother has been dead 5 years, Naomi. This is not hurting her. I had expected denial. I had not expected that. For several seconds, I could hear only the low hum of my office vent. Then I said, It hurts me. He exhaled as if I had become exhausting. You are choosing to take it that way. You removed her because her presence contradicted your story. I removed her because the award is mine. You used my life to get it. My life produced yours too. There was no hesitation. He believed that sentence. I asked whether the booster president knew the answers were false. They are not false. Did he read them? He trusted me. Did he know you wrote the nomination? Everyone helps with their own materials. That is how awards work. That part was believable. People supplied biographies, dates, and supporting documents all the time. The problem was not that Dad helped prepare the file. The problem was that he used authority over the file to manufacture authority over me. I told him the foundation offered to honor only his coaching career. I said I would support that version and give truthful remarks. He refused. They selected me for legacy, he said. I am not accepting a reduced award because my daughter has unresolved feelings. It is not reduced, it is accurate. It tells everyone you objected. Then tell them why. He laughed once without warmth. You want me to stand in front of former players and say my daughter has decided I failed her. I want you to stop making me say you did not. That ended the call. 2 days later, he appeared at Franklin Valley without an appointment. My assistant, Maya, stepped into my office and said, Your father is here. He says it is personal. Through the glass wall, I could see him in the reception area wearing a Ridgeview jacket. 2 students had already recognized him. I considered making him wait. Then I saw him sign a basketball program for one of them. He knew where to arrive as Coach Brooks. I invited him in and closed the door. He did not sit. He placed a red presentation folder on my desk. Inside was a new copy of the speech. He had changed 6 lines. The tuition claim now said he made sacrifices that created the stability for my education. The morning study sessions became a standard of discipline that followed me into every classroom. My mother's name appeared once, in a sentence thanking her for supporting his demanding career. He had not corrected the story, he had made the lies harder to disprove. This is worse, I said. It is broader. It is slippery. It is gracious. I looked at him. To whom? To everyone. That is not what truth is for. He finally sat. "You spend your whole career bringing people together. I have watched you handle board disputes, protests, layoffs. You know how to use language that lets people keep their dignity." I knew what he was doing, but the appeal still reached me. He continued, "I am asking for the same mercy you give strangers. Mercy is not reading a false speech. It is understanding that a person's life cannot be reduced to missed events. I never reduced you to missed events. You reduced me to proof of your success." His face changed. Not much. The public smile disappeared, and beneath it I saw an older man who was tired and scared. "I gave everything to that school," he said. "I know. 38 years, every holiday tournament, every summer, every kid who needed more than practice. I thought that mattered. It does. And now, at the end, my own daughter wants an asterisk." His voice cracked on daughter. I wanted to comfort him. My body leaned forward before my mind caught up. That reflex made me furious with both of us. "You can have an award for what you did," I said. "You cannot have one for what Mom did." He stared at the folder. For a moment, I thought he might hear me. Then he said, "Elaine always needed credit." I stood. The conversation was over, but he kept talking. "She made every sacrifice visible, every receipt, every late night. She wanted you to know what things cost. She wanted me to understand work. She wanted you to compare us. No, she spent half her life protecting you from comparison." He shook his head. "You only know her version. I know who picked me up. That is the custody calendar again. I know who sat beside my hospital bed when I had pneumonia. I know who drove me to the summer program. I know who signed the loan forms. I know who took the pictures you cropped." He rose too. His voice dropped. "And I know who gave you the name that opened every door in this county." There it was, finally stated without decoration. He believed I owed him the use of my success because I carried his name. I reached for the red folder and slid it toward him. He did not take it. "Keep it," he said. "Read it when you are less angry. I am not reading this at the banquet." "You will." The certainty in his voice chilled me. "No." He glanced through the glass wall at my assistant's desk and the students beyond it. "You will stand up when they introduce you," he said. "You will walk to the microphone because that is who you are. You do not humiliate people in public." He knew me well enough to predict my manners and not well enough to understand my limit. I said, "Do not confuse restraint with obedience." He picked up his coat. At the door, he turned back. "The program is printed. Your name is printed. There are people coming from 6 states. If you make this ugly, it will not become noble just because you call it truth." After he left, Maya came in. She had not heard the words through the glass, but she had seen my face. "Should I cancel your next meeting?" I almost said no. Then I remembered that competence was another role I performed when I was hurt. "Yes," I said. "Please." She closed the door. I sat alone with the red folder. Dad had left it on purpose. He wanted the object in my space. He wanted me to rehearse his version until the printed words felt inevitable. I opened to the last page. "Smile, let the room applaud, then hug him." The note was still there. I took a pen and crossed out the instruction. Under it, I wrote one sentence. "A photograph is not proof of a relationship." Then I closed the folder. That afternoon, Lydia called. The foundation had decided to keep the Legacy in Leadership award, but remove the phrase about raising a leader from the official description. Dad had objected. The foundation chair held firm, and I felt relief for exactly 5 seconds. Then Lydia said Dad planned to include the family language in his own remarks. "Can he do that? We cannot control every word a speaker says. Can you remove my tribute from the program? The printed program already lists you." That was not my question. She paused. "Yes, we can announce a change." I asked what would happen to the athletic fund if I withdrew. "Nothing. The fundraiser is fully subscribed." That answer removed the last excuse I had been using. No students would lose money. No program would collapse. The only thing at risk was Dad's preferred story. I told Lydia I had not decided whether to attend, but she should remove the phrase daughter's tribute from any spoken introduction. What should we call it if you speak? Remarks from Dr. Naomi Brooks. She agreed. Then she said, for what it is worth, I am sorry we did not verify the family claims. I told her award committees were built to verify achievements, not childhoods. That may need to change, she said. After the call, I drove to the storage unit where Daniel and I had placed Mom's belongings. I had not opened the green metal box since the year she died. It sat beneath a stack of winter blankets. I brought it home and set it on the dining table. Inside, everything smelled faintly like paper and dust. The spelling cards were still bound with a rubber band. My scholarship letter had a coffee ring on one corner. There were receipts for textbooks, bus passes, application fees, and the blue dress I wore to my installation. I did not need the receipts to prove Dad wrong. That was important. The box was not ammunition. It was a record of love expressed through ordinary costs. Mom had not saved those things for a banquet. She had saved them because she believed details mattered. Near the bottom, I found an envelope with my name. The handwriting was hers. Inside was a letter dated 3 months before she died. Naomi, if you are reading this, you are probably deciding whether keeping the peace is the same as being peaceful. It is not. Peace that requires you to disappear is only quiet. I stopped reading. Daniel sat beside me. The rest of the letter was not a prophecy. Mom did not mention Dad's future banquet or an award. She wrote about my habit of smoothing every room. She said it was a strength until I used it against myself. One line mattered most. You can tell the truth without making a spectacle, but you cannot control whether someone else feels exposed by it. I read that line aloud. Daniel said, "That sounds like your speech." I do not have a speech. You have one sentence. He pointed to the red folder. I knew which sentence he meant, the one I had written beneath Dad's stage direction. A photograph is not proof of a relationship. It was true, but it was not enough. The banquet was still 3 weeks away. I used those weeks to decide what I would and would not do. I would attend because I wanted to honor the work Dad had actually done. I would not read his speech. I would not present evidence, display photographs, list missed events, or expose private details from a stage. I would not protect a false claim by offering vague praise that sounded like confirmation. I would not argue at the microphone. I wrote my boundaries on a yellow legal pad, 4 lines. Then I rehearsed them with Daniel until my voice stopped sounding apologetic. Dad called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. The first message was angry. "You are making this much bigger than it is." The second was soft. "Peanut, I do not want a fight. Come to dinner. We can fix the wording." That one almost worked. I missed him. Not the father I wished he had been. I missed the real man who could make me laugh, remember my favorite pie, and call on my birthday at exactly 7 in the morning. Love does not disappear when clarity arrives. It just loses the right to make decisions for you. I called him back. "We can have dinner after the banquet," I said. "Why after?" "Because I am not negotiating the speech. You have not heard my final version. I have heard enough versions." He was quiet, then he asked, "Are you planning to embarrass me?" "No." "Will you read the tribute?" "No." "What will you say?" "The truth about your career." "That is not enough. It is what I can give." His voice became very calm. "Then do not come." The words hurt more than I expected. He had spent weeks insisting my presence was essential. The moment I separated my presence from his script, he withdrew the invitation. I answered, "All right." He had not expected that. "Naomi, you told me not to come." I said, "If you cannot support me, I can support the truth. You said that is not enough." "That is not what I meant. It is what you said." He began another sentence, stopped, and hung up. I told Lydia I would not attend. For 4 days, I felt relieved. On the 5th day, a former Ridgeview player named Marcus Hill emailed me. He was now a middle school principal. I had met him twice at county education events. He wrote that Dad had asked several former players to contact me. Marcus refused to pressure me, but he wanted to say something about Coach Brooks. The email described a night when Marcus was 16 and afraid to go home. Dad stayed with him in the gym until midnight, then helped his mother find support the next morning. Marcus wrote, "He showed up for me when he did not have to. I am aware that this may not match your experience as his daughter. Both things can be true." I read that sentence several times. It was the first message about Dad that did not ask me to surrender my version. I called Marcus. We spoke for 20 minutes. He told me Dad had changed the direction of his life. Then he said, "Coach asked me to tell you he was a good man. What do you think?" "I think he did good things." The distinction was gentle and exact. Marcus told me the banquet would include dozens of people with stories like his. He said my absence would be noticed, but it would not erase what Dad had done for them. Then he added, "Your presence should not be the price of their gratitude." After we ended the call, I changed my decision. I would attend, not because Dad had one, because I refused to let him own the room, including the chair where I was allowed to sit. I called Lydia and asked whether my seat still existed. "It does," she said. "Please do not tell him I am coming." She hesitated, then agreed. I spent the final week preparing no speech at all. That may sound careless for someone in my position. I speak in public often. I prepare notes, transitions, backup lines, and timing marks, but every written sentence began to sound like another document Dad could claim. So I chose 3 truths and memorized them. My father served students for nearly 4 decades. My mother raised me. I would not confuse those facts to protect anyone. That was all I needed. On the last Saturday in May, I entered the Ridgeview banquet through a side door. The gym had been transformed with white tablecloths, gold lights, and photographs from Dad's career. His state championship teams filled one wall, while letters from former players filled another. Near the stage stood a large portrait of Dad and me at my installation. My mother had been cropped out. I stopped in front of it. Lydia joined me. I asked them to replace that. "It is all right." "No, it is not." She reached for a staff member, but I touched her arm. Removing it 10 minutes before dinner would create the kind of commotion Dad expected me to fear. "Leave it," I said. "It will not mean what he thinks after tonight." Dad saw me before I reached my table. For one unguarded second, he looked relieved. Then he straightened his jacket and became Coach Brooks again. "I knew you would come," he said. "I came to honor your career." He smiled as if I had agreed to everything. "We will talk after." "No, we need to talk now." The room was filling around us. Former players hugged him. Teachers waved. A county commissioner waited to shake his hand. I kept my voice low. "I will not read your speech." His smile stayed in place. "We are not doing this here. I am making sure we do not." He looked toward the stage. "Lydia said your introduction changed." "Yes, you got to her. She corrected the program." His jaw tightened. Then someone called his name, and he turned with a perfect grin. That was the last private moment we had before the lights dimmed. The banquet began with stories that deserved to be heard. Marcus spoke about the night Dad stayed in the gym with him. Another player described the scholarship Dad helped him find. A retired teacher said Dad could make a frightened freshman believe he belonged. I applauded. Nothing about my truth made those stories smaller. That realization steadied me more than the legal pad, the rehearsals, or my mother's letter. Dad's real work did not need my childhood attached to it, only the myth did. Near the end, Lydia presented the Legacy in Leadership Award. She read the revised description. It honored Dad's service to students, his mentorship, and his influence across the county. She did not mention fatherhood. Dad accepted the plaque. His speech began warmly. He thanked assistant coaches, teachers, players, and the foundation. Then he looked at me. "And finally," he said, "I want to hear from the accomplishment that made me proudest." The printed program no longer promised a daughter's tribute, but he announced one anyway. A spotlight found my table. People turned. Some smiled. A few began applauding before I moved. Dad lifted the red folder from the podium. He had brought it. For 1 second, I considered staying seated. That would have been a clear answer. Then I saw the portrait beside the stage, my mother cut away from her own work. I stood because I was done letting him decide what my presence meant. The applause grew as I walked forward. Dad kissed my cheek and placed the folder in my hands. The microphone caught the soft scrape of paper. He leaned close. "You do not have to forgive me tonight," he whispered. "Just read what is printed." He thought the stage had trapped me. Instead, it clarified everything. I opened the folder. 6 pages waited in my voice. The tuition claim, the study sessions, the sacrifices, the applause marks, the final embrace. I placed the speech flat on the podium. Then I looked at my father. "You do not need my forgiveness tonight," I said. "You need my presence to look like proof." The room went still. I did not list what he missed. I did not name the false claims. I did not hold up receipts or restore the cropped photographs on a screen. I turned toward the audience. My father gave many students what they needed at important moments. You have honored that work tonight, and I am glad those stories were told. Dad's face had lost all color. I continued. My mother, Elaine Brooks, raised me. I will not read words that turn her work into someone else's legacy. I came to honor the coach my father was. I cannot use this microphone to certify the father he was not. That was all. I stepped away from the podium. Dad reached for my wrist, then stopped before touching me. Cameras were pointed toward us. For once, the performance protected me instead of him. I walked down the steps and returned to my table. Lydia moved to the microphone. Her voice shook only slightly as she thanked me and introduced the final video from former players. The banquet continued. That mattered. People laughed at the video. They applauded Dad's victories. The athletic fund reached its goal. No one's gratitude was destroyed because I refused to lend mine. I left before dessert. Daniel waited outside. He did not ask what happened. He looked at my empty hands and understood. The red folder remained on the podium. Dad called that night. I did not answer. His voicemail contained no apology. "You made a private disagreement public," he said. "I hope that felt worth it." I listened once, then deleted it. The next morning, Lydia emailed. The foundation had removed the family claims from its website and replaced the cropped portrait with a team photograph. Dad kept the award. The plaque recognized his coaching career. That was the correct ending for the institution. He lost nothing he had honestly earned. He only lost the part that belonged to my mother and me. For several weeks, people sent messages. Some defended him. Some told me their own stories about parents who collected credit instead of memories. Former players thanked me for not attacking their experiences. Marcus wrote one sentence. Both things are still true. Dad and I did not speak for 3 months. Then an envelope arrived at my office. Inside was the original installation photograph. Mom stood beside me in her blue dress, smiling with both hands clasped at her waist. There was no note. I called Dad. He answered but said nothing. "Thank you for returning the photograph," I said. "It was yours." "Yes," another silence. Then he said, "I was proud of you." "I know. I thought that counted." It does not count for everything." The words were my mother's. Dad breathed out slowly. "I do not know how to fix this," he said. That was not an apology. It was the first honest sentence he had offered. "You start by not telling the story for me?" He said he would think about it. We did not reconcile that day. There was no sudden embrace, no perfect confession, and no promise that repaired 30 years. But he stopped using me in speeches. At the next county event, someone introduced me as Coach Brooks's daughter. Dad corrected him. "She is Dr. Naomi Brooks," he said. "Her mother raised her." I heard about it from Marcus. Dad never told me. Maybe that made it more real. The green metal box now sits in my home office. The red folder does not. I left it where my father had placed it, beneath a microphone that could no longer make his version mine. For most of my life, I believed telling the truth would ruin the room. That night, the room survived. So did his real legacy. So did mine. I did not take my father's story away from him. I stopped letting him read it in my voice.